My name's Bee and my dog is having an absolutely terrible week. She had to go to the vet and have some dodgy looking moles removed. The moles were tiny, but she has come out with stitches that look like barbed wire and like a shark has chomped on her. There's not going to be any more talk about kind of like animal illness or anything in this video. She is fine, but she is having a horrible week. She is looking very, very sorry for herself. Here she is just being miserable. And so my reaction is I want to make her something. I have made her some very cute outfits in the past. I feel like that was more for me than it was for her. So I thought what I'd make her is a blanket. And this is what I've got so far. So it's all been in double crochet, apart from here where I did single crochets to do the colour change. I am coming to the end of it. I'm going to do one more stripe of pink here and then another stripe of coral and I'm going to be done. The thing is, I love this little dog so much and I just feel like I want to do a million things for her and I just want to make her the most extra amazing blanket. I know she is not going to know the time that went into this blanket or what it means, but she is going to find it super soft. This is a combination of bamboo and cotton. She loves the blanket. She loves being cozy. We live in the north of England, so there's always, even on sunny days like today, there's always a stray gust of wind that might get her. So she's going to love this blanket. It is super soft, which she's going to love as well. It's going to be easy to clean, which I love. But I also just want to be able to look at her under this blanket and not just be like, yeah, I made her a blanket. I want to look at it and be like, I made her the most extra amazing blanket that I could possibly make her. I already had a lot of this wool and it's already in very extra colours, but the kind of inspiration I'm taking for this blanket is a sort of combination of Marimekko's flowers. I love the way that they use the two colours to make up their work. There's a lot of Yayoi Kusama in here as well. She is one of my favourite artists and I've got various embellishments I want to put on. And maybe there's some kind of like Lisa Frank-esque situation going on here as well. I'm gonna just sit here for a couple of hours on a sunny afternoon and just carry on with this blanket and occasionally check back in to let you know how I'm feeling about it, what I'm thinking of doing next. We'll see how it goes. It might be that this ends up being as much of a Frankenstein blanket as my dog at the minute with all of her stitches, but I'm hopeful it's gonna be quite cool at the end. Hey, so I finished the blanket. It is technically finished. I've woven in most of the ends. Technically I could put it on her right now, although I couldn't because she is enjoying herself in the sun too much. But you know, she could use it as a blanket. So now we're entering the extra zone where I want to see what else I can add to it. So my first thought is I want to do an edging, like a border for it, and I'm going to do a little kind of scalloped border and I'm thinking of doing it in the opposite colour. So here I would have the coral scallops, here I would have the pink scallops. I have not thought through what I'm going to do with these. I think I'm just going to carry on with the pink. I like the idea of having the contrast. Once again, it's the kind of the Marimekko thing of the different contrasting blocks of colour. I know that that is very much not the traditional Marimekko theory, but that's what I take from it. So yeah, I'm gonna work on that, make a decision in a bit of if I think it's actually working out or not. Hey, so I started doing the scallop border and immediately realised that I needed to go around and do a line of single crochet first, which is what I'm now doing here. Because as you can see, with just the single crochet, with just the double crochet, it's not a very kind of consistent, even place, and I think the scallops on their own would have been a bit messy, so I'm going to do the single first, and then if the scallops do look messy I might just leave the single on anyway just to neaten it up. But I also thought I'd talk a little bit about what I'm reading while I'm doing this, just because that's how I'm spending my afternoon and I'm quite lucky in that I can read and crochet at the same time. Well, lucky as in I've been doing it for long enough that I can. And the first book I'm reading is How Westminster Works and Why It Doesn't by Daunt. So, Daunt? Yes, Daunt. Ian Daunt. Which is super interesting because it's just all about UK politics, how it actually all fits together. I read a really good book a while ago called Why We Get the Wrong Politicians by Isabel Hardman. which was very much about why the politicians we have in the UK are so ineffectual. But this is more a kind of like deep dive into why the structures we have just don't work. I'm hopeful he's going to come up with some solutions at the end, because so far he's done a very good job of making it clear that everything's appalling and terrible and nothing positive can succeed. So I'm hopeful for the upbeat bit. But yeah, I'm finding it super interesting, and I'm alternating that with chapters from A Modest Independence by Mimi Matthews. I think she's a British Indian author who now lives in the US. She writes these Regency romances, but I really enjoy them in particular because of the ways that they kind of deviate from the traditional Regency romance. There's not a single duke in sight. There is an earl, but he was only in the first book and he was the villain. Most of her characters are upper middle class people, but they're not royalty. They're not like syphilis-ridden dukes and rakes and things. They're normal people who have normal constraints on what they can do and what they can't do. This is the second in the series where this couple, who aren't a couple yet obviously, have made a trip to India in search of their friend's brother who may or may not have been killed during the Indian uprisings. That whole period of British history is so fascinating to me, whether it's non-fiction or fiction, just because of how little we're taught about it at school. Particularly getting an author with Indian descent talking about it and writing about it in a historical way is really fascinating to me. Just feel like I trust the research she's done a lot more, and she is an author who really researches her books. I have read a lot of books about this portion of British history, and I feel like I have a relatively okay understanding of exactly how shameful British conduct was and how terrible we were. But I do quite like reading slightly escapist fiction about it as well, because I feel like if you only ever engage with a part of history in a way that makes you feel guilty or bad, I personally find I start to close my mind off to it a little bit. Not like I reject the idea that we were the villains, but it becomes something that I recoil from because I'm like, I don't want to feel negative emotion at the moment. And this is one of the reasons I really love historical fiction, is I feel like it kind of balances out that, so you are still engaging with that side of history and slightly rewriting all the conditioning that we were given at school, where it was like, the British were amazing and we like civilized India and all of that, where it's like, no, we like aggressively pillaged that country and oppressed them and were terrible to them. So I feel like reading historical fiction that deals with the bad behaviour of the British there, but also has resolution and human stories and love and things like that, it kind of I think it helps me to kind of like to further engage with that side of things. It's the same reason that I've read a lot of non-fiction books about the Troubles, but I would also read a romance or a sci-fi novel about the Troubles. And I'm actually going to start watching Derry Girls this weekend, because I feel like engaging with a kind of slightly lighter cultural side of things is a good idea to give yourself that well-rounded view. So I'm really I'm just alternating between these, given, depending on whatever I feel like at that moment, while I'm also doing this. Nothing's progressing particularly quickly, but I'm having a very nice time. And my dog is, she's chilling in the sun, like on a soft blanket, not as soft as the one I'm making her, but still pretty soft. Yeah, I'm hopeful that by the end of this weekend she'll start feeling better. She's already super energized and running around and stuff, and like complaining that she can't have her normal walks. But yeah, hopefully this blanket will be ready for her by the end of the weekend.
Hey, me again. The weekend is over now. I did finish the blanket. Here are some photos of it. And here are some photos being modelled by my dog. She loves it. She is very cozy and snuggly with it. Even though it's been super warm, she's just like always lying on it, always got her little nose buried in it. So that's great. After I'd added the scallops, I also wanted to add some hearts. I was going to make hearts and kind of do them in alternating colours. Here's I made the first heart. So here it is on the blanket. And I really wanted to kind of have, pink hearts on the coral sections and coral hearts on the pink sections, the way that I alternated the colours with the scallops. And I guess that was where I was kind of thinking of the Lisa Frank element coming in, not just the fact that my dog looks like a Lisa Frank character. But then when I actually started work on it, I realised, first of all, previously I said that the wool I was using was bamboo cotton. It's not. It's cotton acrylic, but it's super, super soft. I think it feels really like bamboo, which is why, but it is really heavy as well for what it is. It's not a lightweight blanket, which I think she'll really like, because quite often if she's feeling nervous or whatever, if we wrap her up in something, she chills out a little bit. So I'm happy with the weight of the blanket. But yeah, I think adding in a load of extra hearts would have made it too heavy, and we are going into summer. I want it to be the kind of thing that can just be like on her bed. I don't want it to be this really heavy, like thick as a mattress type blanket. And also all of the ends. I probably could have done the Stardew chicken thing of like cross-stitching the hearts on, but that's still a lot of ends for me to weave in. And, you know, she's a dog and she's a terrier and she will kind of pull and gnaw at stuff. And I don't mind if she does that to the blanket. She like has a little chew on it every now and then. As long as she's not swallowing any of the wool, I'm fine with it. Like, I don't think you make your dog something that you want to stay in pristine condition. But I also don't want her like ripping it apart and me having to either constantly be sewing the hearts on or taking them off, it pulling on the rest of the fibres, all the rest of it. So even though the dream of the heart-covered blanket still lives on, I decided just to go for the plain one, which I think looks really nice. And it was really cute when I gave it to her because I just finished weaving in the final end and I've been working on this blanket all weekend. You know, like basically as soon as she got home from the vet, I was like, all right, I'm making this gala blanket. Crocheting away, just sat on the sofa all afternoon on Sunday crocheting it. And then when I finished it and she was on her bed and I went over and I kind of like laid it on her, not fully on her because I didn't want it to touch the stitches or anything, but you know, I laid it on her and she looked at it and then she looked up at me, and she's a dog, you know, she's not going to understand like, wow, you made this for me, or even understand that I made it, you know, but I feel like she was like, she recognized it as like, this is the thing I'd been holding for ages and just constantly pulling around with me. And, you know, whenever she came and sat next to me, like there was the blanket and now it was on her bed and so it's hers. It was just a cute moment, you know, I felt like maybe it's just that it smells like me, but I felt like she recognized this is something that you were holding very close to you and now it is mine. In terms of her recovery, she's doing really well. We took her to the vet today. They said that the stitches are healing really nicely. They're happy to take them out next week. So that's all good. I finished A Modest Inheritance by Mimi Matthews as well. That was like really lovely, just really interesting. It reminded me a lot of Isabella Bird's travel writing. She was a traveller, I think, during the Victorian period and was very, you know, adventurous, particularly for a kind of upper class woman of that time, or for any woman of that time, really. You know, she travelled all over the world. She went to Japan, she went to Pakistan, she went to Hawaii, all these places where the majority of women just did not have that freedom or the bravery and the courage to travel that much. And I felt, you know, like she was like a real life writer, but it felt like when I was reading her travel diaries, reading this Mimi Matthews book. Really lovely. Had that thing I quite enjoy with romance novels where it's like, I literally don't know how these guys are going to make it work. Like, how are these crazy kids going to get together? She wants independence. He wants stability. How on earth are they going to make it work? And then it had the cathartic, oh, and this is how they made it work. And this is how they got together, which I really enjoyed. And I've already downloaded the next one of the series. So that's going to kind of see me through the next week. Yeah, still plugging away with How Westminster Works and Why It Doesn't by Ian Daunt. Just got through a very heavy chapter about the Commons. Got another really heavy one coming up about the law. But still super interested in everything he's sharing. I can definitely imagine coming back to this book to understand it more, particularly when the UK government pulls its latest shenanigans and actually understanding, okay, but what does this mean? And why are people so outraged about this? And, oh, right, they're abusing that particular power. Bit depressing, but also interesting. And I feel like I always feel better if I understand why something has happened or the mechanisms that are in place to make something like that happen. That's both my updates from me. Would recommend both of them if you're interested in either of those topics. Thanks for watching. I'll probably see you next week. Bye.